Alaska is a land of extremes, frozen landscapes, endless nights in winter, and a vast wilderness where few dare to tread. But beyond its relentless beauty, there is something more, something unsettling. From ghost towns to indescribable creatures hidden in the forest, today you will discover 5 disturbing legends and mysteries that may haunt you. So turn off the lights, put on your headphones and wrap yourself up, because this journey will be intense. The abandonment of Portlock, the hunted town. Alaska is a land of extremes, a wild and unforgiving place where winter can last for months, and nature rules with an iron fist. But among its dense forests and snow-covered mountains, there is a place no one dares to call home. Imagine a town where one by one the residents started to disappear. First, hunters, then fishermen, even miners who ventured into the dense trails. They left for work and simply never came back. At first, people believed they were just accidents. Alaska is a harsh territory, home to giant bears and relentless cold. But then the bodies started to appear, or rather, what was left of them. They were found drifting in the rivers, grotesquely mutilated, as if something had hunted them down and torn them apart with brutal force. Some were so disfigured that their families could barely recognize them. That's when the town panicked. Workers started quitting their jobs. Families locked their doors at night and prayed they wouldn't be next. But with each new disappearance, the feeling that something was lurking in the darkness only grew stronger. And then, the native elders decided to speak. They had avoided that region for centuries. To them, this was no mere accident. They knew the forest hid something ancient, something that didn't like the presence of humans. They called it Nantinak. The descriptions were always the same: a tall being, covered in dark fur, with glowing eyes and incredible strength. It was no ordinary animal. It was a predator, intelligent, patient, and it didn't want anyone living in Portlock. At first, the settlers laughed at these stories. Just a legend, they said, an old superstition. But as more bodies appeared, and as giant footprints were found near houses, fear began to spread. And then came the sightings. Residents started seeing something huge lurking around their homes at night. Some doors were found scratched, as if something had tried to force its way inside. Others were simply destroyed, ripped from their hinges. Many fled without looking back, but others tried to resist. They armed themselves with rifles, took night watches, and built makeshift barricades. It didn't matter. One by one, workers and their families kept disappearing. A lumberjack, cutting trees at the town's edge, was found with his skull crushed. His tool lay yards away, as if it had been ripped from his hands. Another man, an experienced hunter, went out to gather supplies and never returned. All they found was his rifle, twisted, as if it had been bent by impossibly strong hands. And then, even the skeptics started to believe. People began abandoning their homes. Some left in groups, taking what they could. Others fled in the dead of night, without saying goodbye. Until at last, only one man remained. The last person in Portlock was the postmaster. He was one of the few who had not yet given up. Perhaps he believed it was all exaggerated. Perhaps he was simply doing his duty. But alone in the empty town, he started hearing things. Heavy footsteps around his house, trees swaying without wind, the sound of something dragging its claws across the wood of the old abandoned buildings. And then, in 1951, even he gave up. He fled, leaving everything behind. Portlock was never inhabited again. Time passed, but Portlock was never forgotten. The few adventurers who dared to explore the ghost town reported an oppressive feeling, as if they were being watched. Some claimed to have found enormous footprints in the mud, larger than any known human or animal print. Others said that as night fell, they heard deep snapping sounds in the forest, followed by an eerie silence, as if all wildlife had frozen in fear. The most terrifying accounts come from those who returned, saying they saw shadows moving among the trees. They describe a tall, broad silhouette, always at a distance, but never far enough. An explorer in 1973 reported feeling something following him for hours. Though he could never clearly see what it was, his only clue was the sound of branches breaking and an indescribable sense of dread. He never returned to Portlock. Some say it's all just mass hysteria or exaggerations from those who arrive already expecting to be scared. Alaska is vast and full of natural predators like bears and wolves, which could have been responsible for the disappearances. But what explains the state of the bodies that were found? What justifies the desperate exodus of an entire town? If it was just wild animals, Why had the natives avoided this land for centuries? Today, Portlock is just a name on old maps, a silent reminder that some places do not belong to men. Whether superstition or real danger, the fact remains. No one has ever tried to rebuild it. The trees have overtaken the old homes, time has erased the trails, and the forest has reclaimed what was once its own. But in Alaska, not all mysteries are bound to the land. Some come from above, from the sky. Flight 1628, UFOs in the Alaskan sky. The sky over Alaska is a dark and frozen ocean. At night it seems infinite, a silent vastness where only the stars shine like distant beacons. But what if, amidst this darkness, something was watching, something that does not belong to Earth? On November 17th, 1986, a Japan Airlines commercial flight was crossing Alaskan airspace. It was a cold and quiet night, no turbulence, no storms, just a routine cargo flight carrying bottles of French wine from Paris to Tokyo. But then, something impossible happened. The flight's captain, Kenju Terauchi, was a veteran with over 10,000 flight hours. He had seen it all in the skies, but that night he saw something he would never forget. To his left, 3 bright objects suddenly appeared. 2 were smaller and flew close to the aircraft. The third was gigantic, much larger than any known commercial plane. The object's lights pulsed and changed colors, from red to orange, then to an intense white. They did not move like conventional aircraft. They made abrupt turns, accelerated and decelerated with a fluidity impossible for any earthly technology. Frightened, Terauchi called the co-pilot and flight engineer. They saw the objects too. The captain immediately contacted Anchorage Air Traffic Control. "Tower, this is Japan Airlines 1628. We are being followed by 3 unidentified objects." On the other end, the controllers checked their radars, but there was nothing. No other aircraft, no signals on the radar, just the plane and something that should not be there. The UFOs began to move, shifting positions rapidly, as if they were analyzing the aircraft. Then suddenly, they disappeared. For a few minutes, the crew thought the phenomenon had ended, but when they looked again, the gigantic object was now behind them. It was a colossal shadow blocking the stars. Terauchi described the scene as something out of a nightmare. That's when he realized this was no illusion. The pilot requested permission to change course. He made a sharp turn, trying to escape the terrifying presence, but the object followed. The United States Air Force was alerted. 2 fighter jets were prepared to intercept any unknown aircraft in American airspace. But before the military could react, the UFOs simply vanished. And just like that, after nearly 50 minutes of an unexplainable encounter, Flight 1628 finally landed safely in Anchorage. But the mystery was only beginning. The incident was investigated by multiple authorities, including the US Air Force, the Federal Aviation Administration, and even the CIA. The recorded communication between the plane and the control tower was analyzed. Military radars were reviewed. Some evidence indicated that some kind of object had indeed been there, but the official report said otherwise. Authorities dismissed the case as a misinterpretation, but Terauchi refused to accept that explanation. He insisted that he had seen something beyond human technology, and he wasn't alone. The other 2 crew members confirmed every detail. Even so, the government never provided a definitive answer. No official explanation was released. No responsible party was identified. What really happened that night? Was it a classic case of optical illusion and instrument failure? Or did Flight 1628 have a real encounter with something not of this world? Time passed, but the mystery of Flight 1628 was never fully resolved. Even among the most skeptical investigators, something didn't add up. Some notes made during the investigation indicated that military radars had detected anomalies in the airspace, something that was quickly classified as secret. Moreover, other pilots began speaking out. Similar reports surfaced in the following years from both commercial and military pilots who claimed to have seen impossible objects flying over Alaska's mountains. However, fearing job loss or being discredited, many chose to remain silent. Kenju Terauchi had no such choice. After reporting his experience, he was removed from his position and reassigned to an administrative role, never again commanding an international flight. His once impeccable career was ruined. A coincidence? Or an effort to silence someone who knew too much? In the years that followed, UFO researchers and aerial phenomenon investigators continued to look into the case. but any official request for information about the incident was met with vague responses or partially redacted documents. After all, what could be so concerning that even the United States government preferred to remain silent? Alaska is vast, unexplored, and full of mysteries, but not all disappearances happen in the sky. Some people vanish on land and are never seen again. The Alaska Triangle Killer. Alaska is a land of mysteries. Its vast and unexplored territory has hidden secrets for centuries, from indigenous legends to inexplicable cases recorded to this day. But among all the terrifying stories of this wild land, there is one that stands out because its victims leave no trace. Have you ever heard of the Bermuda Triangle? Well, Alaska has its own version. Since 1972, more than 16,000 people have disappeared within a mysterious area between Anchorage, Juneau, and Barrow. A staggering number that raises an inevitable question. What is happening there? Tourists, hunters, mountaineers, and even locals have set out to explore the region and never returned. Among the missing are even politicians, including a United States congressman. And the strangest part? Very few bodies have ever been found. At this point, the question is no longer just, where did these people go? But rather, is something taking them? There are many theories about what could be behind the Alaska Triangle. Some believe the explanation is simple. The region is inhospitable, full of treacherous mountains, freezing temperatures, and wild animals that can attack without warning. Getting lost there means a death sentence. But could that really explain all the cases? Because some disappearances are simply too strange to be attributed to the climate or common accidents. There are stories of planes that disappeared from radars without issuing distress signals. No wreckage was ever found, as if the aircraft had evaporated into thin air. There are reports of experienced explorers who went out for a simple hike and completely vanished, even though they carried enough supplies and equipment to survive for days or even weeks. And then there are the even darker cases. People who were last seen in groups yet suddenly seem to get lost in broad daylight, even with witnesses around. Are these just coincidences? Or is there something terrifying within this invisible triangle? Theories behind the mystery. For some, the answer lies in the supernatural. Some believe the Alaska Triangle hides portals to another dimension, an idea based on the legends of native peoples who have always considered certain regions of Alaska as forbidden places. They speak of gateways between worlds, passages to unknown realms, where those who enter never return. Others believe that something is alive within the triangle, something that hunts humans. Could it be an unknown predator, a creature that watches from a distance waiting for the right moment to attack? Some believe that Alaska harbors a being that has been described in various cultures throughout history, something that walks among the trees, stalking those who get lost in the cold. But there is still one last theory, and perhaps it is the most disturbing of all. What if the true killer of the Alaska Triangle is not a monster, but a man? What if, amid the frozen vastness, there is a place where no one can hear your screams? Experienced hunters tell stories of abandoned cabins deep in the forest, some showing signs of recent use, even though no one has ever seen who occupies them. Others speak of mysterious footprints that begin in the middle of the snow and simply disappear with no explanation. And then there are the cases of those who manage to escape. Some people reported that, during expeditions in the Triangle, they felt they were being watched. Some even claim to have seen silhouettes in the distance, hidden among the trees, moving silently, following their steps. Once, a group of hikers found a small abandoned campsite in the middle of the forest. There were signs that someone had been there recently: a still warm campfire, a setup tent, and a pile of personal belongings scattered on the ground. But what no one found was the owner of the campsite. Nothing explained their disappearance. The unanswered questions authorities claim that extreme conditions and dangerous terrain are the main causes of these disappearances. That the cold, the snow, and the dense forest make the region treacherous for anyone who ventures there unprepared. But why are so many bodies never found? Are snowstorms covering the victims' tracks? Are wild animals destroying any evidence? Or is there something else out there? Something that does not want to be discovered? The truth about the Alaska Triangle may never be fully revealed, but one thing is certain: for those who disappear there is no return. However, this is not the only terrifying legend of this frozen land, because something even stranger lurks in Alaska's rivers and coasts, something that may call your name and take you away forever. Kajtaka, the call of the otter man. Alaska is a wild place, filled with dense forests, treacherous rivers, and snow-covered mountains. But for the indigenous peoples who have inhabited this land for centuries, there is something far more dangerous than the natural elements. Something that lurks in the shadows of the trees or swims silently beneath the icy waters. The Tlingit, one of Alaska's native tribes, speak of a creature called Kushtaka. To them, the Kushtaka is not an ordinary animal. It is not a bear, a wolf, or any common beast of the forest. It is something different, something intelligent. The shapeshifter of the North reports describe the Kushtaka as a being that can change its form at will. Sometimes it looks like a man. Other times it takes on the appearance of a huge bipedal otter with dark eyes and sharp claws. But its true power lies in its voice. They say the Kushtaka imitates human voices. Fishermen, hunters, and travelers have reported hearing whispers from nowhere, soft calls in the voice of a loved one. A mother hears her child calling her from the forest. A man hears the voice of his missing brother, pleading for help near the river. A sailor hears a lost friend calling him from the fog, and when they follow the sound, they are never seen again. The ones who returned. But the stories don't end there. There are reports of people who vanished for days, only to be found alive, yet something was wrong. Silent, disoriented, unable to say where they had been or what had happened. They simply stared into nothingness, as if something had left them in a trance. Some, upon regaining speech, claimed they remembered nothing. Others refused to talk. What really happened to these people? Had they simply been lost, or had something taken them to a place beyond human understanding? A trickster, or something worse? Some of the oldest legends say that the Kushtaka is not just a malicious entity, but a cruel trickster. It enjoys toying with its victims before taking them to its own world, a world that does not belong to the living. There are stories of entire villages that heard voices in the night, and by morning, some of their people were gone without a trace. Footprints led to the river, but there were never footprints returning, only silence and the flowing water. Many believe that the Kushtaka uses its voice to lure lost travelers, drawing them deeper into the forest or into the depths of the water. Others say it appears to those on the brink of death, offering them a choice: die as a human or be reborn as a Kushtaka. The rational explanation, or is it? Some attempt to explain the legend with logic. Researchers suggest that starvation, extreme cold, or isolation could cause hallucinations. Extreme exhaustion can make the brain create familiar voices, especially when a person is desperate. But does that explain so many cases over so many years? And what about those who returned different? The unanswered mystery. The truth about the Kushtaka remains shrouded in mystery. Is it just a myth, meant to warn children not to wander alone? Or is it something far older and far more real, something that science cannot yet explain? In Alaska, the line between reality and the unknown is thinner than we imagine, and sometimes the answers we seek are not found on land, but hidden in the invisible frequencies of the world around us. HAARP station, weather control, or something worse. In the middle of Alaska's frozen expanse, far from cities and busy roads, there is a facility surrounded by mystery. To some, it is just an atmospheric research center. To others, it is something much more sinister. This is HAARP, the High-Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Officially, it is a project created to study the ionosphere, the upper layer of the atmosphere that influences satellite communications and Earth's weather. But since its inception, HAARP has been the target of disturbing theories. For skeptics, the facility is just a harmless scientific project. But for those who look closer, there are too many unanswered questions. Imagine a place equipped with giant antennas, capable of emitting powerful radio waves directly into the sky. Now, imagine that these same antennas could be used to alter the weather, manipulate radio frequencies, and even affect the human mind. This is not fiction. This is what many people believe HAARP is really doing. HAARP and weather control. One of the most famous theories surrounding HAARP is that it can manipulate the weather. There have been numerous allegations that this technology can trigger storms, hurricanes, and even earthquakes. In 2010, a massive earthquake devastated Haiti, and it didn't take long for accusations to emerge that the event was not natural. According to conspiracy theorists, HAARP was used to cause the disaster. Scientists dismissed this possibility, stating that there is no existing technology capable of controlling tectonic plates. But some people ask, if this technology did exist, would they tell us? Another strange event occurred in 2018 when unusual heat waves and a reddish sky were observed near the HAARP facility. Witnesses claimed that the air seemed to vibrate and that birds began acting disoriented, flying in circles before collapsing to the ground. The government denied any involvement, but local residents weren't convinced. Was it just a coincidence, or was something being tested that night? Mysterious signals in the air beyond weather control. There are also the strange radio signals picked up by people near HAARP. Amateur radio operators and frequency scanners have reported picking up unusual noises from the station's direction. Metallic hums, distorted voices, and sounds resembling encrypted transmissions. These signals have been recorded and analyzed by audio specialists, and the results were unsettling. Many of these sounds do not match any known radio transmission patterns. Some suggest that HAARP might be involved in top-secret military research, testing new forms of communication, or even interfering with enemy radar and satellite systems. But there is an even more terrifying theory. What if these frequencies are not meant for humans? HAARP has been accused of sending signals into space, attempting to contact something beyond Earth. This may sound like science fiction, but declassified documents show that governments have invested billions in researching extraterrestrial signals. Could HAARP be a key in that effort? The darkest theory: mind control. If weather control isn't terrifying enough, some theories take it even further. People living near the facility have reported experiencing strange physical effects after spending extended time near HAARP. Some claim to feel severe headaches. Others say their thoughts become foggy, as if something is interfering with their minds. There are even reports of insomnia, paranoia, and auditory hallucinations, whispers that seem to come from nowhere, as if someone or something is inside their heads. Could HAARP be conducting mind control experiments? As unbelievable as it may sound, military projects have studied psychological warfare using radio waves and low-frequency sound manipulation. There are documents suggesting that specific frequencies can induce fear, panic, and even alter human behavior. If HAARP truly has this capability, what kind of experiments could be happening away from public eyes? The government denies everything, but does that mean it's not true? Authorities insist that all of these fears are baseless paranoia. According to scientists, HAARP does not have the power to affect the weather, let alone control minds. The station was officially decommissioned in 2014 and handed over to a civilian research institution. But conspiracy theorists remain unconvinced. To them, HAARP never stopped. It just became even more secretive. After all, if HAARP was so harmless, then why was its initial funding provided directly by the US Department of Defense? The mystery remains. What is really happening inside HAARP? Is it just a misunderstood scientific project? Or is it a tool capable of manipulating the world in ways we never imagined? Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: Alaska holds secrets that may never be revealed. And so we reach the end of this list of 5 disturbing legends and mysteries of Alaska. But believe me, this is only the beginnings. Alaska is vast, frozen, and unforgiving. But what makes it truly terrifying is not just its wild nature, it's the secrets it hides. The ghost towns that were never rebuilt, the vanished people who left no trace, the ancient creatures that defy logic, the skies that glow with lights that should not be there. These stories are just a glimpse into the immensity of legends and unexplained events that surround this mysterious land. How many other secrets still lie buried beneath the ice? How many other shadows are still lurking between the trees? If these stories made you question what really happens in Alaska, just know that there is so much more beyond the veil of the unknown. And now I want to hear from you. Which of these legends was the most disturbing? Have you heard of other unexplainable stories from this place? If you enjoyed this video and want a part 2, leave a comment and share it with those who love a good mystery. Because Alaska still has many stories to tell, and some of them might be even scarier.